Jay Crowder has officially requested a trade from the Phoenix Suns, and the Suns have agreed to find him a new home. Mark Stein elaborates in his latest Substack. Entering the final season of his current $10.2 million contract, Jay Crowder let the Suns know that he was seeking a contract extension. League sources say that the Suns' messaging in response was to let Crowder know that at 32, he was no longer assured of starting or finishing games ahead of Cam Johnson. That gulf between the parties led Crowder to seek an exit from the desert that has landed him on an indefinite mutual leave from the team until Phoenix can find a trade for him. Suns coach Monty Williams confirmed exactly what Crowder heard. Cam Johnson will start at the 4 for the Suns this season. Johnson brings better shooting to the table, shooting almost 43% last season from 3. He's more athletic at this point. Admittedly, though, Crowder does bring better defense, toughness, and veteran savvy that can be trusted in the playoffs. Furthermore, it's important to note that Jay Crowder often takes on the most difficult defensive assignment when this team matches up against players like Giannis, LeBron, and other players who some of the other Phoenix Suns struggle with on defense. So I have to ask, what is the real value of a defensive specialist in today's NBA? Don't get me wrong, defense is extremely important, and you need a solid defensive strategy and defensive core in order to win, especially in postseason situations where the stakes are much higher and it's important to play on both sides of the basketball. And while players who hold more defensive expertise hold value, they're often traded for players that make a greater impact on offense. Take Patrick Beverley, for example. Patrick Beverley has moved around a lot, especially in the last 5 years. And I think this has a lot to do with the fact that teams value the defensive ability that Pat Bev brings to the table. But when presented with an opportunity to trade him for a player that has a greater offensive ability, 9 times out of 10, teams are going to be willing to make that trade. Most teams in this high volume shooting environment that the NBA has become want a player who they know can contribute more consistently on offense. And age in this situation with Jay Crowder is undoubtedly a factor. Jay Crowder is 32 years old, and I'm not saying that his best years are behind him, because if we're being brutally honest, his productivity on offense has pretty much flatlined in the last couple of years. Some people might even argue that his offensive productivity has declined, especially if we're looking at last year. And none of us who are paying attention can forget the abysmal, unbelievable loss that the Suns faced at the hands of the Dallas Mavericks in a pivotal Game 7. The Suns absolutely have to look towards the future in a situation where the makeup of their team is not really remarkably different from last year's roster. Because while the Suns haven't changed a lot of teams in the West, like the Lakers, the Clippers, you may even argue that the reigning champion Golden State Warriors are getting better because of players like Kuminga and Wiseman getting more opportunity to showcase their talents, and of course Wiseman just being healthy this year. All of this makes for greater challenges for the Suns, who in the last couple of years have done really well to secure a top spot going into the playoffs. It is really hard for fans to see what adjustments were made during the offseason that will lead to a different outcome than the one the Suns have faced over the last 2 years. And clearly the Suns' answer to this equation is to invest in Cam Johnson and develop a younger player who has exhibited some glimmers of greatness on offense, especially when we're talking about his three-point shooting. And there's no doubt that three-point shooting in today's NBA is becoming more and more valuable. Theoretically, if they develop Cam Johnson's post game and they develop him on defense, he could become a very effective two-way player, because one thing is for certain, while he is definitely not as physically strong as Jay Crowder or as smart on defense, he's athletic, he's fairly tall, especially for someone who can shoot as well as he does, and provided that they make that investment in developing him on defense, developing that post game or somewhat of a mid-range game, Cam Johnson will find his place among some of the above average two-way players in the league. And for what it's worth, since he's so young, who knows? He could become an elite two-way player in the NBA. If we're being, again, brutally honest, that carries way more value right now than what a defensive specialist brings to the table. If I was Jay Crowder, I would not take the Suns' stance on this as any major criticism of him. I think it's actually honorable of them to let him know in no uncertain terms that at this point, given everything that they have to consider, they have to have a player that can provide offense because they don't have that much of a change in their roster. And this particular roster has not been able to get over the hump and win a championship. They don't have a huge trade opportunity that's going to bring in a life-changing player like Kevin Durant into the fold. There's so many things that we can say here, but this is a lesson and a testimony to any player in the league or any player that aspires to be in the league that the more offensive ability that you can bring to the table when called upon, the greater value you're going to have in terms of the way the game is changing. Yes, defensive specialists still exist in the NBA and they do have value. You have Patrick Beverley, you have Rudy Gobert, who people count as this well-rounded player, but if we're being honest, defense is what Rudy Gobert brings to the table. But the days of the Steven Jacksons, the Chris Andersons, if you remember the Birdman, the Dennis Rodmans, players who are literally not asked to give up very much on offense except to make wide open layups, those days are rapidly coming to a close. And players like the aforementioned players are being replaced by the Jaylen Browns and the Jason Tatums of the world, who are out of this world defenders, but can also give you at least 20 points on any given night. So while pure defensive specialists will never be obsolete in an NBA that has players who are evolving so much in terms of what they can do on offense, think centers who are bringing the ball up the court and assisting on 10 plays a night and shooting 5 threes, something we've never seen in the NBA of the past. Whenever presented with this opportunity to trade a defensive specialist for a player who can offer more offense, most teams are going to be willing to part ways with that defensive specialist because they just do not hold the same value that they used to hold in the past. What are your thoughts? Do you think that Jay Crowder should stay with the Phoenix Suns, accept the role of a sixth man or role player off the bench? Do you think that he'll have a starting role on another team, or will he just be used in the same way by some other franchise? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I have lots of great commentaries and shorts that will be coming your way throughout the 2022-2023 season. I'm so excited. I hope everyone's excited for basketball that's starting. I hope everyone's doing well. I will be back soon, and I'm out.